My name is Dale Thompson, 34 years old, and I have been a federal agent for almost a decade now. My family has never known. Growing up as the black sheep meant I was used to the sideways glances and whispered comments. Tonight at Carlucci, one of Boston's most exclusive restaurants, my sister Jennifer leaned over during my father's birthday dinner. "Can you even afford this place?" she sneered. I felt that familiar knot in my stomach, knowing what was coming. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button if your family has ever underestimated you too. I grew up in Brookline, a wealthy suburb of Boston, as the youngest of 3 children in the Thompson family. My father, Thomas, built his reputation as one of the most successful corporate attorneys in Massachusetts, representing Fortune 500 companies in high-stakes litigation. My mother, Audrey, was equally accomplished as a cardiothoracic surgeon at Massachusetts General Hospital. They met at Harvard, married after graduation, and expected nothing less than excellence from their children. My older brother, Marcus, was the golden child from day one. 4 years older than me, he breezed through school with straight A's, captained the debate team, and followed directly in our father's footsteps to Harvard Law. Today, at 38, he is already a junior partner at our father's firm with a corner office overlooking Boston Harbor. Jennifer, 2 years my senior, carried the artistic genes in the family, but channeled them into something our parents deemed respectable. She studied architecture at Princeton, earned her master's at MIT, and now runs her own boutique firm designing luxury homes for Boston's elite. Her work has been featured in Architectural Digest twice in the past year alone. And then there was me. From kindergarten, I struggled where my siblings excelled. While they brought home perfect report cards, I fought to maintain B's and C's. Reading was particularly difficult. The letters seemed to jumble on the page. Years later, I would be diagnosed with dyslexia, but back then, my parents simply labeled me as not trying hard enough. "Dale just needs to apply himself," my father would say during parent-teacher conferences, as if willpower alone could reorganize the letters swimming before my eyes. My mother was slightly more sympathetic, but no less demanding. "The Thompson name stands for excellence," she would remind me. "You need to uphold that standard." By high school, the pattern was set. Marcus and Jennifer excelled academically and socially, while I found my place on the wrestling team and in woodshop class. I could build anything with my hands and had the situational awareness and physical skills that made me a state champion wrestler, but those accomplishments barely registered at our dinner table discussions. When college application season arrived, my siblings' Ivy League acceptances were celebrated with elaborate dinner parties. My acceptance to the University of Massachusetts was acknowledged with tight smiles and comments like, "Well, it is a perfectly adequate school." I still remember the dinner when I announced my major in criminal justice. My father set down his fork with a sigh. "Criminal justice? What exactly does one do with that besides become a mall security guard?" Marcus laughed. "Maybe he can guard my office building someday." My mother attempted diplomacy. "Darling, wouldn't you rather consider business administration? At least then you could work in risk management or corporate security if that interests you." They never asked what drew me to criminal justice. They never knew about the high school friend who disappeared my junior year, later found to be a victim of human trafficking. They never knew how that case awakened something in me, a desire to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. During my senior year of college, a guest lecturer from the FBI spoke to my criminal investigation class. Something clicked that day. Here was a path that combined my physical abilities with my sense of justice and my surprising talent for reading people and situations. After graduation, I applied to several federal agencies and was accepted into a competitive training program. The training was grueling, both physically and mentally. But for the first time in my life, my dyslexia wasn't a hindrance. My spatial awareness, memory for faces, and ability to spot patterns made me stand out. When we received our assignments, my supervisor pulled me aside. "Thompson, you have a knack for undercover work. Your background assessment suggests you're used to playing roles and managing complex social dynamics. He had no idea he was describing my family dinners. For security reasons, agents in my division were instructed to be vague about our specific roles. Government analyst was the suggested cover, bland enough to discourage further questions. For my family, this confirmed what they already believed. Dale had settled for mediocrity. An analyst, my father repeated when I shared my new job. Pushing papers for the government. Well, stable employment is nothing to sneeze at, I suppose. Jennifer asked if I had dental insurance, as if that were the highlight of my career achievement. Marcus wondered aloud what the retirement benefits were like, since you'll probably be in the same cubicle for the next 40 years. Over the years, their assumptions about my career solidified. At holiday gatherings and family events, I became the subject of thinly veiled pity. My father would introduce me last among his children, my career meriting only a vague mention if acknowledged at all. My mother would squeeze my arm and whisper, "There is still time to go back for an MBA, you know." I considered correcting them countless times. I wanted to tell them about the operations I had helped coordinate, the trafficking rings dismantled, the lives saved. But part of me knew that no achievement would ever be enough in their eyes. And as the years passed, the gap between their perception and my reality became almost comfortable in its familiarity. Besides, my work required discretion. Undercover operations meant keeping a low profile, and explaining sudden cancellations or mysterious absences would have been complicated. It was easier to let them believe I was unreliable or unambitious than to raise questions I couldn't answer. So, I accepted my role as the family disappointment, finding satisfaction in my work and building relationships with colleagues who valued my skills and contributions. My apartment walls held commendations and photographs I could never display during family visits. My life developed a strict compartmentalization. Work, where I was respected and accomplished, and family, where I was perpetually the underachiever. Until that night at Carlucci, when the boundaries between my two worlds collapsed in the most unexpected way. The call from my mother came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was finishing paperwork on a recently concluded operation. "Dale, darling, your father is turning 65 next Saturday," she began without preamble. "We're having a small dinner at Carlucci at 7. You remember Carlucci, that Italian place in the financial district?" I did remember. Carlucci was where my parents celebrated special occasions, a restaurant so exclusive that reservations were typically made months in advance. "We have the private dining room," she continued, not waiting for my response. "Marcus is flying in from New York, and Jennifer is bringing her new boyfriend, that gallery owner I mentioned. Do try to come on time, and perhaps wear that navy suit I bought you for Christmas 2 years ago. It's important to dress appropriately for establishments like Carlucci." The subtle dig wasn't lost on me. In her mind, I probably spent my evenings in sweatpants eating takeout in front of the television. She had no idea that the suit she bought rarely left my closet because I owned several higher quality ones for undercover work. "I'll be there," I promised, mentally reviewing my schedule. Our team had just wrapped up a major case involving a drug trafficking operation linked to several upscale Boston restaurants. Carlucci hadn't been implicated, but we had conducted surveillance there due to its connection with several high-profile clientele who were persons of interest. After hanging up, I stared at the commendation letter on my desk. Last month, our operation had resulted in the arrest of 12 individuals and the seizure of over $4 million in drugs and assets. My role in the infiltration had been praised by the director himself, but no one outside my department would ever know about it. I glanced around my apartment that evening, taking in the reality my family never saw. The bookshelf filled with texts on criminal psychology, international law, and tactical operations. The locked cabinet containing my service weapon and credentials. The framed photograph of my team after our first successful major operation, faces partially obscured for security. For a moment, I considered calling my mother back and making an excuse. There was always more work to do, reports to file, intelligence to analyze. But avoiding family gatherings had become too obvious a pattern. My absence would only reinforce their narrative about my lack of commitment and responsibility. Instead, I called my supervisor, Special Agent Ryan Karras. "This dinner might be awkward," he acknowledged after I explained the situation. "Carlucci is still on our radar as a potential meeting spot for several individuals connected to the Bartelli group. We have a new trainee working undercover as waitstaff, gathering intelligence. Just maintain your cover and avoid drawing attention. Given your family dynamic, that shouldn't be difficult." There was a hint of sympathy in his voice. Over the years, Ryan had heard enough about my family to understand the situation. "Consider it practice," he added more lightly. "If you can fool your own family, maintaining cover with suspects should be easy." Saturday evening arrived with unseasonable warmth for April in Boston. I chose a charcoal gray Tom Ford suit I had purchased for an operation requiring infiltration of a high-end charity gala. The tailoring was impeccable, designed to blend in with the wealthy elite while allowing enough movement if action became necessary. As I adjusted my tie in the mirror, I thought about the last undercover assignment that had concluded just 2 weeks ago. I had posed as a potential investor for a nightclub that we suspected was a front for money laundering. For 3 months, I had played the role of a board trust fund beneficiary, looking for business opportunities, gradually working my way into the confidence of the club's owner. The case had culminated in a tense evening where I was nearly discovered before backup arrived. The subsequent arrests had made the local news, though my involvement remained confidential. My reflection showed no trace of that tension now. Just Dale Thompson, unremarkable government employee, heading to a family dinner where he would once again be the least interesting person at the table. I arrived at Carlucci 15 minutes early, a habit from my training. Always scout locations in advance, assess exits and sightlines, identify potential threats or allies. The restaurant occupied the ground floor of a renovated historic building, its understated exterior belying the luxury within. Valet parking attendants in crisp uniforms greeted patrons, and a doorman ushered guests into a marble foyer where a maitre d' stood at an elegant podium. "Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation?" the maitre d' asked, his eyes performing a quick assessment of my appearance. "I'm with the Thompson party. Private dining room," I replied. Recognition flickered in his eyes. "Ah, yes. Mr. Thompson's birthday celebration. You're the first to arrive. Please, follow me." As we walked through the main dining area, I scanned the room casually, noting the positions of the waitstaff, the security cameras discreetly mounted near the bar, and the various exits. Force of habit. Then I spotted him. Jackson Cole, our newest trainee, dressed in Carlucci's staff uniform, serving water to a couple near the window. He was 26, fresh out of training, eager to prove himself. I had helped with some of his tactical preparation, but hadn't expected him to be assigned here tonight. Our eyes met briefly, and I gave an imperceptible nod. Rule 1 of encountering colleagues undercover: minimize acknowledgement, maintain role. The private dining room was positioned at the rear of the restaurant, offering views of Boston Harbor through floor-to-ceiling windows. A long table had been set for 6, with elegant place settings and fresh flower arrangements. I chose a seat with my back to the wall, another professional habit that my family interpreted as social awkwardness. Alone in the room, I took a deep breath, mentally preparing for the evening ahead. Years of undercover work had taught me to adopt personas and navigate difficult social situations, but nothing tested those skills quite like my own family. With suspects and targets, the objectives were clear. With family, the emotional terrain was far more complex. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. "Our guy at Carlucci reports Bartelli associate arriving in main dining room. Stay sharp but maintain cover." I tucked the phone away as the dining room door opened. "Game time." "Dale, you actually made it," my sister Jennifer said as she entered the private dining room. Her tone suggested she had expected me to cancel or simply not show up. She air-kissed near my cheek, the scent of her expensive perfume momentarily overwhelming, and almost on time. Wonders never cease. Behind her, a tall man with artfully tousled hair and designer glasses extended his hand. Patrick Donovan, "You must be the mysterious younger brother I have heard so much about." The way he said mysterious made it clear Jennifer had not painted a flattering picture. "Dale Thompson," I replied, shaking his hand with the precise amount of pressure that conveyed confidence without aggression, a skill honed through countless professional interactions. Jennifer glanced around the luxurious dining room, then back at me with a slightly raised eyebrow. "This place has gotten even more exclusive since we were last here. I heard they turned away a state senator last month. Must have been quite a shock walking in." Before I could respond, my brother Marcus arrived with his wife Stephanie. Marcus had our father's build and commanding presence, dressed in what I recognized as a custom Brioni suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my government salary. "Little brother," he boomed, clapping my shoulder with unnecessary force. "Still rocking the department store suit, I see. At least you clean up decently." Stephanie offered a warmer greeting, genuinely asking how I had been before Marcus steered her toward the far end of the table. My parents arrived last, making an entrance as they always did. My father, still imposing at 65 with silver hair and the confident stride of a man accustomed to commanding rooms. My mother, elegant in a navy dress and pearls, her surgeon's eyes taking in every detail of the setting. "Dale," my father acknowledged with a brief nod. "Glad you could fit us into your schedule." My mother embraced me lightly. "You look thin," she whispered. "Are they feeding you in that government cafeteria?" We settled around the table, and I noticed the seating arrangement placed me at the far end, opposite my father who sat at the head. Marcus and Jennifer flanked him, their partners beside them, with my mother at the other end and me beside her. The family hierarchy made physical. A server appeared immediately with menus and to take drink orders. My father selected an expensive bottle of Barolo without consulting the rest of us. When the server turned to me, I simply requested water. "No wine, Dale?" my mother asked with concern. "Are you not feeling well?" "I'm driving," I explained, a partial truth. The complete truth involved departmental regulations about alcohol consumption during active operations, even when technically off-duty. Jennifer exchanged a glance with Patrick. "Or perhaps it is not in the budget," she said with a light laugh that contained genuine mockery. "This Barolo is probably $200 a bottle." $275, my father corrected, seemingly pleased with his knowledge. "But worth every penny. A proper celebration requires proper wine." The conversation shifted to family news and achievements. Marcus detailed his recent courtroom victory, a corporate merger worth billions that had earned him recognition in legal circles. Jennifer described her latest architectural project, a waterfront development that had attracted international investors. My father spoke about a landmark case he was consulting on, and my mother shared news of a groundbreaking surgical procedure she had performed. When attention reluctantly turned to me, my father cleared his throat. "And what about you, Dale? Anything new in your— what is it again? Clerical position?" "I work as an analyst," I replied, using the cover story I had maintained for years. "Government department." "Ah, yes. Very mysterious," Marcus teased. "Top secret paper filing, is it?" "Leave him alone," my mother said, though her defense felt patronizing. "Not everyone needs to be at the top of their field. There is nothing wrong with steady, reliable work." Jennifer turned to Patrick. "Dale has always been the practical one in the family. No grand ambitions or stress. Just a simple 9-to-5 job, and then home to his apartment in— where is it again? Somerville? Jamaica Plain," I corrected. "Right, Jamaica Plain," she repeated as if it were an exotic, slightly concerning location rather than a perfectly respectable Boston neighborhood. "Do you still have that little Honda?" "I do," I said, not mentioning that my unassuming vehicle was a deliberate choice for maintaining a low profile. My department had high-performance vehicles available when operations required them. "Well, a Honda is reliable," my mother offered kindly, "and I am sure the government benefits are decent." The server returned with wine for everyone except me and took our dinner orders. My father ordered the most expensive steak on the menu without glancing at the price. Marcus followed suit. Jennifer selected a seafood dish that had been featured in Boston Magazine. When it was my turn, I ordered the chicken marsala. "Playing it safe as always," Marcus commented. "The Wagyu beef is extraordinary here." "I like chicken," I replied simply. As appetizers arrived, my father proposed a toast to celebrate his birthday. We raised our glasses as he spoke about his blessings, his successful career, his beautiful wife, and his accomplished children. When mentioning me, he paused noticeably before saying, "And Dale, who has always marched to his own drummer." Marcus followed with his own toast, praising our father's professional legacy and mentioning how proud he was to continue in his footsteps. Jennifer spoke about our father's influence on her drive for excellence. When my turn came, I kept it brief. "To the values you taught us: integrity, perseverance, and doing what is right, even when it is difficult." "Happy birthday, Dad," Marcus smirked. "Integrity and perseverance? Big words for pushing papers. What exactly do you persevere through, Dale? Paper cuts? Printer jams?" The table laughed, except my mother, who shot Marcus a disapproving glance that lacked real conviction. "Actually," Jennifer said, setting down her wine glass, "I have always wondered what you actually do all day. You say analyst, but what does that mean? What do you analyze? You never give specifics." All eyes turned to me. The familiar pressure of maintaining my cover while family scrutiny intensified. "It is government work," I said with practiced vagueness. "Data assessment, report compilation. It involves confidentiality agreements." My father scoffed. "Confidentiality about what? Tax returns? Import tariffs? You make it sound like you are with the CIA." Another laugh circled the table. If they only knew how close to the truth they were dancing. "I am sure Dale does important work," my mother said with the same tone she had used when displaying my mediocre art projects on the refrigerator as a child. "The government needs all types of employees to function." "Well," my father said, "it is never too late to make something of yourself. I have a contact at Suffolk Law who might consider a late admission if you decided to finally challenge yourself. Law school could give you a fresh start, a chance to join the family tradition." I had heard this suggestion countless times over the years. The assumption that I had settled for mediocrity rather than chosen a path that fulfilled me was deeply entrenched in family mythology. "I am satisfied with my career choice," I said quietly. "Satisfied," Jennifer repeated. "That is exactly your problem, Dale. You have always been satisfied with just enough, never pushing for more. The Thompson family has a legacy to uphold." "Speaking of legacies," Marcus interjected, "Stephanie and I have some news." He reached for his wife's hand. "We are expecting. Dad, you are going to be a grandfather." The table erupted in congratulations, my father beaming with pride and my mother wiping away tears. In the commotion, no one noticed the young server approaching our table with careful, deliberate steps. It was Jackson Cole, our trainee agent. Jackson approached with a coffee service tray, positioning himself beside my chair with professional precision. His posture was perfect, his expression composed, but I could see the slight recognition in his eyes. We had trained together in tactical scenarios just months ago. "Welcome back, federal agent." "Your usual coffee?" he said clearly, loud enough for the entire table to hear. The dining room fell into sudden silence. My father, who had been mid-sip of his wine, choked and coughed. My mother froze with her napkin halfway to her lips. "Thank you," I replied evenly, trying to communicate with my eyes that this was not the plan. But Jackson continued, seemingly oblivious to my subtle signals. "The director wanted me to personally congratulate you on last week's operation. Very impressive work, sir." Jennifer's fork clattered against her plate. Marcus stared with his mouth slightly open. "I appreciate that," I said, keeping my tone neutral despite the internal alarm bells ringing in my head. This breach of protocol was extremely unusual, even for a trainee. Something was happening. "Federal agent?" my father finally managed, his voice hoarse from coughing. "What is he talking about, Dale?" Before I could answer, the restaurant manager appeared at our table. An elegant man in his 50s, Antonio Carlucci himself rarely interacted with customers anymore, leaving that to his staff. Yet here he was, approaching our table with a deferential expression I had never seen directed at anyone in my family before. "Agent Thompson," he said with a slight bow of his head, "it is an honor to have you dining with us again. Your work last month with those traffickers was extraordinary. My niece was one of the waitresses working that night when you made the arrests. She still talks about how professionally your team handled the situation." My mother made a small, strangled sound. "Thank you, Mr. Carlucci," I replied, mind racing. This was far beyond coincidence now. Something had shifted in our operation for my cover to be blown so publicly. "Traffickers?" Jennifer whispered, looking between me and the restaurant owner. "Dale, what is going on?" Marcus leaned forward, skepticism written across his features. "Is this some kind of joke? Are you paying these people to pretend you are important?" "Sir," Jackson said, addressing me while ignoring my family's confusion, "Director Rawlings asked me to inform you that there has been a development in the Bartelli case. He needs you to call in as soon as possible." At the mention of Bartelli, I understood immediately. Our operation had accelerated, and Ryan needed me to know. This was his way of extracting me from a social obligation without raising suspicions among potential observers in the restaurant, even at the expense of my family cover. I nodded to Jackson and pulled out my phone. "Excuse me for a moment," I said to my stunned family as I stepped away from the table to make the call. Ryan answered on the first ring. "Thompson, sorry about the theatrical approach, but we have movement on Bartelli." His right hand just entered the main dining room with an unexpected guest, a judge we have been monitoring for corruption. "We need your eyes, given your history with the case." "Understood," I replied, glancing back at my family. They were huddled in intense conversation, shooting bewildered looks in my direction. "I will be there shortly." When I returned to the table, 5 pairs of eyes locked onto me with expressions ranging from disbelief to suspicion to dawning realization. "What is going on, Dale?" my father demanded. "Is this some elaborate prank?" "No prank," I said, deciding that maintaining my cover was now secondary to the operational needs. "I need to step out briefly to handle a work situation." "Work situation?" Jennifer repeated incredulously. "That man called you a federal agent." The owner mentioned traffickers. "What kind of analyst are you exactly?" "I work for the Federal Bureau of Investigation," I said, the words feeling strange after years of deflection and vague half-truths. "I am not authorized to discuss the details of my position or ongoing operations." Marcus laughed, though it sounded forced. "Come on. You expect us to believe you are an FBI agent? You? The kid who could barely pass English in high school?" "I never said FBI specifically," I corrected, my professional training kicking in automatically. Information security was second nature now. I said federal agent. My father's expression shifted from confusion to calculation, a look I recognized from watching him assess potentially valuable connections at social events. "What division? What is your title? Why would you keep this secret from your family?" My phone buzzed again. A text from Ryan. "Bartelli moving toward private rooms. Need eyes now." "I have to go," I said, standing and placing my napkin on the table. "I will explain later." My mother reached for my arm. "Dale, you cannot just drop this bomb and walk away. We deserve answers." "Mom, I am sorry, but duty calls. This is not how I wanted this to happen." "So it is true?" Jennifer asked, her voice smaller now. "You actually have an important job? One that involves arresting criminals?" Patrick, who had been silent throughout the exchange, suddenly spoke up. "Wait, I remember now. There was a major bust here about a month ago. Art smuggling connected to human trafficking. It was all over the news, but they did not name the agents involved." "That was you?" I gave a non-committal shrug, neither confirming nor denying, another habit from years of maintaining operational security. "Unbelievable," Marcus muttered. "If this is true, which I am still not convinced of, Why would you let us believe you were just some low-level government clerk all these years? Perhaps, my mother said slowly, because we never gave him reason to tell us otherwise. The insight from my mother, of all people, momentarily stunned me. But there was no time to process it. I needed to get eyes on Bartelli and the judge before they concluded whatever business had brought them to Carlucci tonight. I really do have to go, I insisted. Family dinner will have to wait. Happy birthday, Dad. As I turned to leave, I saw my father's expression cycle through confusion, disbelief, and finally something I had rarely witnessed directed at me: respect, or at least the beginning of it. Dale, he called as I reached the door. We will continue this discussion. Soon. I nodded, then slipped into the corridor where Jackson was waiting. Sorry about blowing your cover, sir, he said as we walked briskly toward the surveillance position in the service corridor. Director's orders. He said the family situation was secondary to the operational needs. He was right, I agreed, though a part of me wondered if Ryan had also made a personal calculation on my behalf. He knew more than most about my family dynamic. As we approached the monitoring station, I pushed thoughts of my family aside and focused on the operation at hand. The personal fallout would have to wait. Right now, I was Agent Thompson, and there was work to do. 40 minutes later, I returned to the private dining room. The Bartelli situation had been handled with minimal disruption to the restaurant patrons. The judge was now in custody, and Bartelli's right-hand man was under surveillance by other team members. My role had been to identify key players and coordinate the discreet interception of the judge as he exited the restroom, away from public view. I found my family still at the table, their meals largely untouched, engaged in intense conversation that halted abruptly when I entered. The atmosphere was charged with tension and unasked questions. Sorry for the interruption, I said, taking my seat. Work emergency. Work emergency? Jennifer repeated, her voice tight. Is that what you call arresting people in fine dining establishments? I did not arrest anyone tonight, I clarified, which was technically true. Another agent had made the actual arrest. But you are actually some kind of federal agent? Marcus pressed, skepticism still evident in his tone. This is not an elaborate hoax? I reached into my inner jacket pocket and removed my credentials, placing them on the table without opening them. Government protocol discouraged unnecessarily displaying official identification, but this situation called for some proof. I have been a federal agent for 9 years, I said simply. My work often involves undercover operations, intelligence gathering, and yes, occasionally arrests. My father reached for the credentials, examining them with the careful attention to detail that had made him a formidable attorney. After a moment, he passed them to my mother, whose surgeon's hands trembled slightly as she held the leather case. This appears legitimate, my father conceded. But I still do not understand why you would deliberately mislead your family about your profession. Was it amusing to have us believe you were underachieving all these years? The accusation stung, though I had anticipated it. My father always assumed the worst about my motivations. It was not about amusement, I replied evenly. My position requires discretion. The less people know about my work, the safer it is for everyone, including my family. That is a convenient excuse, Jennifer snapped. We are not just people, Dale. We are your family. You deliberately misled us. Did I? I countered, years of suppressed frustration finally surfacing. Or did you all just assume the worst about me, as usual, and I never bothered to correct you? Marcus frowned. What is that supposed to mean? From the day I struggled with reading in first grade, this family decided I was the disappointment, the underachiever, the one who would never measure up to the Thompson standard. None of you ever asked what I wanted or what I might be good at. You just decided I was failing because I wasn't following your prescribed path. My mother reached for my hand, which I gently but firmly moved away. Darling, that is not fair. We only wanted what was best for you. No, I said, keeping my voice level with the control that had served me well in tense operational situations. You wanted what you thought was best for the Thompson family image. There is a difference. "So this is revenge?" my father asked, his lawyer's instinct to go on the offensive kicking in, letting us believe a lie to punish us for not appreciating your unique qualities as a child. "It was not revenge," I said. "It was partly professional necessity and partly self-preservation." After years of judgmental comments and condescension, it became clear that nothing I achieved would ever be enough for this family. So why keep trying to prove myself? Patrick shifted uncomfortably, clearly regretting his presence at this family implosion. Stephanie placed a supportive hand on Marcus's arm. "That is ridiculous," Marcus said. "You cannot honestly expect us to believe that you, who could barely maintain a C average, are now some kind of super agent. Even with legitimate credentials, you are probably just security detail. The guy who stands at the door checking IDs." The familiar dismissal might have hurt years ago, but now it just felt tired and predictable. "Believe what you want, Marcus. Your opinion stopped mattering to me a long time ago." Jennifer's eyes widened at my bluntness. "Who are you? The Dale I know would never talk like this." "That is exactly the point," I said. "You never knew me. None of you did. You were too busy comparing me to your expectations to see who I actually was." My father's face flushed with anger. "Now see here, young man. We provided you with every advantage, every opportunity. If you chose a path of secrecy and deception, that is hardly our fault." "Advantages like what?" I asked. "The constant reminders that I was not as smart as Marcus or as talented as Jennifer. The disappointed sighs whenever I brought home a report card. The suggestions that maybe I just wasn't trying hard enough when letters scrambled before my eyes because no one bothered to check if I had dyslexia until I was in college. The mention of dyslexia caused my mother to pale. "You were diagnosed with dyslexia? When? Why didn't you tell us?" "I was tested during my sophomore year of college," I explained, "and I didn't tell you because by then it didn't matter. You had all decided who and what I was. A diagnosis wasn't going to change that narrative." "This is absurd," my father declared. "We are your parents. We supported you, paid for your education, gave you everything you needed to succeed. You gave me everything except what I actually needed," I countered. "Acceptance, understanding, the space to be different from what you expected without being treated as defective." The table fell silent. Around us, the restaurant continued its elegant dinner service. The muted conversations and soft clink of silverware, a stark contrast to the emotional battlefield of our private dining room. "I need to understand something," Jennifer said finally. "If you really are this important federal agent, why live in Jamaica Plain? Why drive an old Honda? You must make decent money." "Cover," I explained. "Living modestly helps maintain my undercover status. It's also practical for the work I do." "So when you canceled on my gallery opening last year," Jennifer began, "I was in Miami, infiltrating a smuggling operation. And when you missed Dad's retirement party?" Marcus asked, still sounding skeptical. "Surveillance in New York. We were tracking financial transactions linked to organized crime." My father leaned forward. "What exactly is your position, Dale? Your title?" "I am not at liberty to disclose the specifics of my role," I said, falling back on protocol. "But I am a senior field agent with specialized training in undercover operations." "Senior?" my mother repeated, as if the word itself was difficult to associate with me. "Yes, Mom. I have been doing this for almost a decade. I am good at my job." "Very good, actually," Marcus scoffed. "Come on. This all sounds like a TV show. The quiet, underestimated brother secretly being some kind of hero? It is a little convenient, isn't it?" Before I could respond, my phone rang. The screen showed Ryan's number. Given that he had just contacted me about Bartelli, a follow-up call this soon could only mean significant developments. "I need to take this," I said, standing but remaining at the table. "Thompson," I answered, automatically shifting into my professional tone. "We have movement on the primary target," Ryan said without preamble. Bartelli himself just entered through the kitchen. He has 3 associates with him, all armed. We think they may be here to deal with the judge's handler. I need you on point for the intercept team. Understood. ETA 3 minutes to position, I responded, already calculating the fastest route to the service entrance where our tactical equipment was staged. As I ended the call, I looked at my family, all watching me with varying degrees of disbelief and dawning realization. My professional demeanor had clearly unsettled them. I have to go, I said, no longer apologetic. There is an ongoing situation that requires immediate attention. More important than your father's birthday dinner? My mother asked, though without her usual guilt-inducing certainty. Yes, I said simply. Lives may depend on it. As if on cue, the dining room door opened, and Ryan entered, dressed in an impeccable suit that concealed both his weapon and his authority. Only I could recognize the focused intensity in his eyes that signaled operational mode. Agent Thompson, he said formally. We need to move now. My father stood, lawyer's instinct, making him assert his presence. Excuse me, but we are in the middle of a family dinner. Ryan assessed him with a cool, professional glance. Sir, I apologize for the interruption, but this is a matter of national security. Agent Thompson's expertise is required immediately. National security? Jennifer echoed, her skepticism finally giving way to astonishment. Agent Karras, I said. This is my father, Thomas Thompson, and my family. Dad, this is Supervisory Special Agent Ryan Karras, my team leader. The introduction was brief but significant, bridging my 2 worlds for the first time. Ryan extended his hand, and my father shook it automatically, legal training kicking in despite his confusion. Mr. Thompson, your son is one of our most valuable agents, Ryan said with formal courtesy. His work has saved lives and protected this city in ways that will never make headlines. I would explain further. But we have an urgent situation developing. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Dangerous? Dale, are you in danger? Mom, I need to go do my job, I said gently but firmly. We can discuss this another time. Without waiting for further protest, I followed Ryan toward the door. The years of putting duty first making the choice automatic, despite the personal earthquake occurring behind me. Dale, my father called as I reached the doorway. His voice held an unfamiliar note, something between command and plea. Be careful. I paused, meeting his eyes across the room. For the first time in my adult life, I saw something there beyond disappointment or judgment. It looked remarkably like concern. Always am, I replied, and then I was gone, transitioning fully into Agent Thompson as the dining room door closed behind me. The operation unfolded with the controlled chaos familiar to any experienced field agent. Bartelli had indeed come to handle the judge's betrayal personally, not yet knowing we had intercepted his contact. With tactical teams positioned throughout the restaurant, we executed a careful plan to contain the situation without endangering patrons. I led the primary intercept team, coordinating movements through the kitchen and service corridors to surround Bartelli and his associates in the wine cellar where they had gathered. The takedown was textbook perfect, each team member performing their role with precision born of extensive training and experience. As I secured handcuffs on Anthony Bartelli, the man we had been building a case against for 3 years, I felt the familiar rush of professional satisfaction. This arrest would dismantle a network responsible for drug trafficking, money laundering, and violence across the Northeast. You have no idea who I am, Bartelli growled as I led him toward the service exit where transport vehicles waited. Anthony Bartelli, age 52, I recited calmly. Head of the Bartelli crime family, suspected of orchestrating 7 murders, confirmed money laundering through 15 front businesses, including the Lakeside Casino, and trafficking approximately $30 million in illegal narcotics annually. Did I miss anything important? His eyes widened slightly before narrowing in fury. The comprehensive knowledge was part of the psychological impact of arrest, letting suspects know just how completely their operations had been compromised. As we moved through the kitchen, I noticed the private dining room door open slightly, my family watching with expressions of shock as I led a handcuffed man in an expensive suit through the back of the restaurant. 4 other agents followed with Bartelli's associates. The entire procession moved with the calm efficiency that marked professional law enforcement at its best. Once the suspects were secured in transport vehicles, Ryan approached me in the alley behind the restaurant. "Clean operation," he said. "The highest praise in our line of work. The director is pleased. This arrest will make a significant impact on organized crime in Boston." "Thank you," I replied, removing my tactical gloves. "What about my family situation?" Ryan glanced toward the restaurant. "That is up to you. Official cover is blown, obviously, but operational details remain classified. You are authorized to confirm your general role but not specific case information." I nodded, understanding the parameters. "I need a few minutes to speak with them." "Take the time you need," Ryan said. "Debrief at headquarters tomorrow at 09:00. When I re-entered the private dining room, my family sat in stunned silence. Their meals remained untouched, wine glasses half empty. They looked up as one when I walked in, as if seeing a stranger wearing a familiar face. "The situation has been resolved," I said, taking my seat once more. "Was that an arrest we just witnessed?" my father asked, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. "Yes," I confirmed. "I cannot discuss the details." "You led that team," Jennifer said. "Not a question, but a statement of observed fact. Those other agents took orders from you." "Yes." Marcus leaned forward, his earlier skepticism replaced by reluctant fascination. "That man in the handcuffs. Was he dangerous?" "Very," I said simply. My mother reached across the table, her fingers trembling slightly as she touched my hand. "All these years, when you said you were working late or couldn't make family events, you were doing this?" "Often, yes." "Why didn't you tell us?" my father asked, but the accusatory tone had been replaced by something closer to bewilderment. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "Partly operational security. My work requires discretion. But if I am being honest, it was also because nothing I ever did was good enough for this family. By the time I found something I excelled at, I had stopped looking for your approval." The stark truth landed heavily in the center of the table. My father, never at a loss for words in a courtroom, seemed momentarily speechless. "But surely you knew we would be proud," my mother insisted. "A federal agent in the family. Would you?" I asked. "Or would you have found ways to minimize it, like everything else I have done? Would it have been, well, it is not exactly a surgeon or a corporate attorney, but at least it is respectable?" Jennifer looked away, unable to meet my eyes, perhaps recognizing her own voice in my imitation. "That is unfair, Dale," my father said, though without his usual force. "Is it?" I countered. "When I told you I was working for the government, did you ask what I did? Were you interested in my career choice? Or did you immediately assume I had settled for mediocrity because that fit your narrative about me?" The lack of response was answer enough. "For what it is worth," I continued more gently, "I love my job. I am good at it. The skills you all saw as deficiencies turned out to be assets in my field. My spatial awareness, my ability to read people, my physical capabilities, even my dyslexia, which taught me to memorize and recognize patterns in different ways, all make me effective at what I do." "You really are important," Marcus said, the realization seemingly difficult for him to process. "Those agents respected you." "I have earned that respect," I replied, "not through family connections or inherited advantages, but through hard work, dedication, and results." My phone vibrated with an incoming message. A glance showed it was from Ryan. "Press will be notified of Bartelli arrest in 30 minutes. Might want to warn family they'll see it on the news but cannot confirm connection." I looked up at my family. "There will be a significant arrest reported on the news tonight. I cannot confirm or deny any connection to what you witnessed, and I would appreciate your discretion." My father, ever the attorney, nodded in understanding of confidentiality requirements. "So what happens now?" Jennifer asked. With us, I mean. Do we just pretend this revelation never happened and go back to our regular family dynamic? That is up to all of you, I said. I am still the same person I have always been. The only thing that has changed is your perception of me. But you have been living a double life, my mother protested. The real Dale has been hidden from us. No, I corrected gently but firmly. The real Dale has been here all along. You just never bothered to see him because he didn't fit your expectations. My father cleared his throat. I think, perhaps we all need to re-examine some assumptions we have made over the years. Coming from him, this qualified as a seismic shift. I would appreciate that, I said. But I want to be clear about something. I don't need your approval or validation anymore. I found those things in my work and among colleagues who value me for my actual abilities, not for living up to a predetermined idea of success. Jennifer looked troubled. That sounds like you are cutting us off. I am establishing boundaries, I clarified. I am open to building more authentic relationships with all of you, but not if it means continuing to be treated as the family disappointment who finally did something worth acknowledging. My phone vibrated again. Another message from Ryan. Team requesting your presence for final processing of suspects. Extraction team standing by outside restaurant. I stood, straightening my jacket. I have to go. Duty calls. Now? My father asked. The entitlement of a man unused to being walked away from evident in his tone. We are in the middle of an important family discussion. Yes, now, I replied without apology. This is who I am, Dad. My work matters and sometimes takes precedence over family gatherings. That is part of what you need to understand if we are going to move forward. For a moment, I thought he might argue further, assert the primacy of family obligation as he had throughout my childhood. Instead, he nodded slowly. We will talk soon, he said. Not quite a question, but not quite a command either. We will, I agreed. Happy birthday, Dad. As I walked out of the restaurant to join my team, I felt lighter somehow, as if setting down a burden I had carried for years. The family mythology of Dale, the underachiever, had finally been shattered. But more importantly, I had shattered my own need for their approval. Whatever came next would be on my terms, not theirs. The week following the Bartelli arrest was professionally triumphant and personally transformative. The operation made headlines across New England, though my name and face were kept out of the media as per department policy. The director personally commended our team for dismantling one of the most significant organized crime operations in Boston's recent history. At home in my Jamaica Plain apartment, I sat on my couch Sunday morning, coffee in hand, finally able to relax after the intensity of post-arrest processing, evidence cataloging, and preliminary hearings. On the coffee table before me lay 5 business cards, each representing a different family member who had reached out in the days since the revelation at Carlucci. My father had called first, just 24 hours after the dinner. His approach was characteristically direct. The Bartelli arrest is all over the news, he said without preamble when I answered. Major organized crime figure, federal operation, $7 million in seized assets. Was that you? Dad. You know I can't confirm or deny operational details, I replied, the response automatic after years of training. Of course, he said quickly. I understand professional discretion. I want you to know. I'm impressed, Dale. Truly impressed. The words sounded strange coming from him, a man who had built his life around being impressive rather than being impressed by others, especially his perpetually disappointing youngest child. Thank you, I said simply. I'm speaking at the Massachusetts Bar Association next month, he continued. They've asked me to discuss notable cases from my career. I thought, perhaps you might attend, as my guest. Maybe we could have dinner afterward, just the two of us. The invitation was transparently self-serving, a chance to casually mention his federal agent son to his colleagues, incorporating my newly discovered prestige into his own social capital. The old Dale might have eagerly accepted, grateful for any crumb of paternal approval. I appreciate the invitation, I said instead. but I can't commit to events that far in advance. The nature of my work makes scheduling unpredictable. Ah, he sounded genuinely disappointed. Of course, duty calls and all that. Well, the invitation stands if your schedule allows. I'll keep it in mind, I promised, neither accepting nor rejecting outright. My mother called the following day, her approach softer, but no less revealing. "Darling, I've been thinking about what you said about your dyslexia," she began. "I feel terrible that we never had you tested as a child. As a doctor, I should have recognized the signs." "It's okay, Mom," I said. "It worked out in the end. Still, I wonder how different things might have been if we had understood your challenges earlier, if we had provided appropriate support instead of what we did." The acknowledgement, however indirect, was meaningful coming from her. "I've been doing some reading," she continued, "about dyslexia in high-achieving individuals. Did you know Richard Branson is dyslexic, and Steven Spielberg? Apparently, it often correlates with exceptional spatial reasoning and creative problem-solving." I smiled despite myself. It was so characteristic of my mother to research, to try to understand through study, to seek reassurance in the success stories of others. "Mom, I'm okay with who I am," I told her gently. "The question is whether you and Dad are okay with who I am, rather than who you wanted me to be." She was quiet for a moment. "We always loved you, Dale. Perhaps we didn't always show it in the right ways, but we did." "I know," I said, and I did. My parents' love had always been conditional, tied to achievement and family image, but it was love nonetheless, expressed in the only way they knew how. Marcus called next, his tone oscillating between genuine respect and lingering disbelief. "So little brother is a big-shot federal agent," he said with a forced laugh, still processing that one. "Life is full of surprises," I replied mildly. "Listen, some of the partners at the firm have connections with the Justice Department. If you ever need any legal consultation on your cases." "Marcus, I work with federal prosecutors who specialize in criminal law," I explained. "Corporate attorneys aren't typically involved in our cases." Right, of course." He sounded disappointed, another opportunity for networking and mutual advancement slipping away. "Well, if you ever need anything else, professional connections." "I appreciate the offer," I said, not unkindly. "How's Stephanie feeling? Morning sickness subsided yet?" The shift in topic seemed to catch him off guard. She's good. Better now that she's in the second trimester. We're having a boy, by the way. Found out yesterday." "Congratulations, Marcus. You're going to be a great dad." "You think so?" The unusual vulnerability in his voice reminded me that beneath the competitive achiever lay a man facing his own uncertainties. "I do," I said sincerely. "Just remember that he'll need your support and acceptance, even if, especially if, he turns out different from what you expect." The silence that followed suggested the message had landed. Jennifer's approach was perhaps the most direct, arriving at my apartment unannounced with coffee and pastries one morning. "Your security system is surprisingly basic for a federal agent," she commented as I let her in. "Sometimes the best security is looking like you have nothing worth securing," I replied, accepting the coffee she offered. She glanced around my apartment with new eyes, taking in the simple but high-quality furniture, the bookshelves filled with volumes on history, psychology, and international affairs, the framed black-and-white photographs I had taken during rare moments of downtime. "This isn't what I expected," she admitted. "What did you expect? Surveillance equipment? Weapons on the walls?" She laughed, a genuine sound without the usual edge. "Maybe. I don't know. Just not this. It's actually nice. Thoughtful. I contain multitudes," I said, with a slight smile. "Apparently so." She perched on the edge of my couch. "I've been thinking about what you said at dinner, about us never seeing you, and I realized you were right. I've been so busy establishing my own identity as the successful daughter that I never questioned the family narrative about you." Her candor surprised me. Of all my family members, Jennifer had been the most consistently dismissive of my choices and achievements. "Why are you here, Jen?" I asked gently. She looked down at her coffee cup. To apologize, I guess. And maybe to actually get to know my brother. The real one. Not the version I created in my head. The gesture was unexpected and touching. "I'd like that," I said. In the following weeks, I established new boundaries with each family member. I declined my father's invitation to speak at his country club, but suggested meeting for lunch instead. Just the two of us without the performative aspect of public recognition. I had coffee with my mother, and genuinely listened to her concerns about my safety without allowing her to slip into overprotectiveness. I met Marcus at a baseball game, where we talked about fatherhood and his anxieties rather than professional achievements. Jennifer and I began a tradition of monthly dinners where family and careers were off limits as topics, forcing us to discover other common ground. The relationships were far from perfect. Years of established patterns couldn't be undone in a few weeks. My father still occasionally slipped into comparing achievements. My mother still worried excessively. Marcus still competed, and Jennifer still judged. But there was a new foundation of truth and mutual respect that hadn't existed before. More importantly, I had found peace with myself. The burden of seeking approval from people who had never truly seen me had been set down, replaced by the confidence that came from being valued for my actual strengths and contributions. In my work, I continued to excel, leveraging my unique abilities to build cases and protect people who would never know my name. The satisfaction of this purpose filled spaces that family validation never could. One evening, about 6 months after the fateful dinner at Carlucci, I received a text from my father asking if I was free for lunch the following day. When I met him at a small cafe near his office, I was surprised to find him already seated, not working on his phone as usual, but simply waiting, watching people pass by on the street. "Dale," he said, standing to shake my hand. The formality remained, but there was a warmth in his eyes that was new. "Dad," I replied, taking a seat across from him. "Everything okay?" He nodded, uncharacteristically hesitant. "I've been doing some thinking. A lot of thinking, actually. About you, about our family, about the kind of father I've been." I waited, giving him space to continue. "I realized something recently," he said, looking directly at me. "I've spent my entire life measuring success by external markers. Titles, income, recognition, prestige. I applied that same yardstick to my children, expecting you all to validate my parenting through achievements I could brag about at the club. The self-awareness was unexpected. My father had never been one for introspection or admitting error. "What changed?" I asked. He smiled slightly. Ironically, it was a case. "I've been representing a client, a CEO of a tech company. Brilliant man. Tremendously successful by any conventional measure. During preparation for his testimony, I learned his son had taken his own life last year. 22 years old, Harvard graduate, everything going for him by all appearances. But he felt like he could never measure up to his father's expectations." My father's voice grew tight. "This CEO told me he would trade every achievement, every dollar, every recognition to have seen his son clearly before it was too late, to have valued him for who he was, rather than pushing him to be something else." He reached across the table, briefly touching my arm. "It made me think about how close I came to losing you, not to death, thank God, but to the distance I created through my own blindness. I'm not good at saying this kind of thing, Dale, but I'm proud of you. Not because you turned out to be successful in ways I recognize, but because you had the courage to find your own path despite my disapproval." The words struck deep, touching a place inside that I had protected for years. "Thank you, Dad," I said simply. "That means a lot." We talked for nearly 2 hours that day, more openly than we ever had before. There were still awkward moments, old habits that emerged and had to be consciously set aside, but there was also a new foundation being built, one conversation at a time. As I walked back to my car afterward, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The painful years of feeling inadequate, the determination to forge my own path, the the professional fulfillment that had sustained me through family disappointment, and now, the unexpected opportunity for healing and connection on new terms. The greatest lesson I had learned was that true respect, whether from others or for oneself, was never about titles or achievements. It came from living with integrity, from using one's unique abilities in service of something meaningful, and from having the courage to be authentic, even when that authenticity was inconvenient or unwelcome. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan about an upcoming operation, pulling me back to the present, to the work that had become both my purpose and my sanctuary. I smiled as I read it, grateful for the clarity that came with knowing exactly who I was and what I contributed to the world, regardless of who recognized it. Family approval, I had discovered, was nice when it came, but it was not necessary for a life well lived. The only approval that truly mattered was my own. If you have ever felt misunderstood or underestimated by those who should have seen your worth, I hope my story resonates with you. Remember that your value is not determined by others' recognition of it. Sometimes the people who should love you most see you the least, but that does not diminish who you are or what you bring to this world. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with family members who did not see your true worth? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if you found value in this story, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they are enough, exactly as they are. Thank you for listening, and remember, living authentically is the ultimate victory.